Cops unleash, K9 on old black girl, freeze, when her Delta Force mother comes running. It was a warm Saturday afternoon in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The streets were peaceful. Birds sang from the trees and the sun glowed across the rooftops. In that calm corner of town, a little girl named Lila Reeves walked home from a friend's house. She was 10 years old, wearing a bright yellow dress with white dots, the kind her mother had picked for her because it made her smile. She walked happily, swinging her lunch bag and humming her favorite tune. The air smelled of fresh-cut grass. The world, for her, was still simple, full of kindness, stories, and people who smiled back. But sometimes, life changes in a single moment. A few houses down, an elderly neighbor named Mrs. Green noticed Lila walking by. Mrs. Green had seen something earlier, a teenager running past her car, and she thought it looked suspicious. When she saw Lila looking around, confused about which street to take, she panicked. She assumed Lila was the same person. She picked up her phone and made a call she thought was helping. "Hello, police?" "Yes, there's someone wandering around the neighborhood. I think she's trying to break into cars." Her voice trembled with fear, not hate. She never realized that one misunderstanding could turn a quiet afternoon into chaos. Within minutes, 2 police cars arrived. The sound of sirens broke the calm air. Lila froze in the middle of the street as the cars stopped beside her. She had never seen police rush like that before. 2 officers stepped out, Officer Daniels and Officer Cole. They were experienced men, both wearing dark uniforms and protective vests. Their tone was sharp but cautious. "Hey, stop right there!" one of them shouted. Lila turned, startled. Her heart started to pound. I didn't do anything," she said softly. But her small voice was lost in the noise of the sirens and the static from the radio. Officer Cole moved closer. "Hands where I can see them," he called out. Lila looked around. There was no one else on the street. She felt her hands trembling as she slowly lifted them, but her fear made her voice crack. "Please, I just live right over there." The other officer, seeing her step back, thought she was about to run. "Don't move," he shouted again. Inside the patrol car, a K9 unit, a German shepherd named Reck, began barking loudly. It wasn't an attack command, just instinct. The barking echoed through the quiet street, and the tension grew. Lila took a step backward, her eyes wide and full of tears, and then the worst misunderstanding happened. The barking made her afraid, so she turned and started to run. She wasn't running away because she was guilty, she was running because she was scared. Officer Daniels called out, "She's running." Without hesitation, Officer Cole opened the car door. "Rex, go!" The dog leaped out, sprinting after Lila with speed and power. Lila screamed. "Please don't hurt me." Her small legs carried her down the street, but she stumbled. The gravel scratched her knee. The sound of the barking grew louder and louder behind her. The dog wasn't trying to attack. It was trained to stop suspects, but to a frightened child, all it meant was danger. Across the street, a few neighbors peeked out of their windows. One man took out his phone and started recording. Another just watched, frozen, unsure of what to do. No one came to help her. The police shouted commands, but everything blurred in Lila's mind. She only knew she had to run. Her voice cracked again. "Please, I didn't do anything, please." The K9 was close now, just a few feet behind. The dog barked, waiting for another command. One of the officers realized the mistake. She was not a teenager or a threat. She was just a little girl in a yellow dress. "Wait, hold him back," he yelled, but it was too late. The fear had already broken her. She dropped to her knees, covering her face, crying uncontrollably. The barking stopped as the handler called the dog back. The officers approached, realizing how badly the situation had gone wrong. One officer spoke gently now. Hey, you're okay, sweetheart. We're not going to hurt you." But Lila couldn't hear him. She was shaking. She had fallen, scraped her arm, and her voice trembled as she whispered one word over and over. "Mom." And that single word, that cry for her mother, would change everything that came next. A few blocks away, Major Alana Reeves was cleaning her small backyard. She had served in the military for 15 years, part of a Delta Force unit known for impossible missions. But today she was just Mom, wearing jeans, a t-shirt, and a smile. Her phone rang. It was her neighbor. "Alana, you need to come quick." "It's Lila. The police are here. There's a dog." She didn't wait for the rest. She dropped everything, ran to her truck, and drove like lightning down the street. The sound of the sirens grew louder as she approached. When she saw her daughter kneeling on the road, surrounded by officers and a barking dog, something inside her snapped. She parked the truck in the middle of the street and got out slowly. Her heart pounding but her mind calm. Calm in the way only a soldier could be. She walked straight toward the scene. "That's my daughter," she said, her voice firm. The officers turned. "Ma'am, please stay back." "No." Her tone carried power. It wasn't anger yet, it was control. Her daughter saw her and cried harder. "Mom!" Alana moved closer, ignoring the warnings. "You're okay, baby." "I'm here." The dog's handler pulled Rex back, sensing the rising tension. Officer Daniels stepped forward. "Ma'am, please, this is a misunderstanding." "We got a call." Alana's eyes stayed fixed on her daughter. "You got a call about what? A child walking home in the daylight?" Her voice was calm but heavy, the kind of calm that made even trained officers feel uneasy. Lila reached for her mother's hand. Alana knelt, wiping her tears, checking her scraped knees. She spoke softly. "You're safe now, sweetheart." For a moment, the whole street was silent. Even the dog stopped barking. A crowd had gathered. Some whispered. Others recorded. But no one moved. Everyone could feel something powerful in that moment. Not anger, but truth. One officer looked embarrassed, realizing what had happened. He spoke quietly. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. We thought—" Alana stood up slowly, still holding her daughter's hand. Her gaze was steady. "You thought wrong, and next time someone's child might not be lucky enough to have their mother nearby." Her words weren't shouted, but they hit hard. The officers lowered their eyes. One reached for his radio, calling for a supervisor. The other just stood still, not sure what to say. Lila looked up at her mom. "Did I do something bad?" Alana shook her head gently. "No, baby. You did nothing wrong. Sometimes people see what they fear instead of what's real." Those words stayed in the air like a quiet echo. The tension slowly eased. The officers guided the dog back to the car. A female officer from another unit arrived, helping Lila with a first aid kit. As the flashing lights faded, Alana sat on the curb with her daughter, holding her close. "You're strong," she whispered. "You didn't do anything wrong. Don't ever let fear make you small." Lila sniffled. "I was scared, Mom. I know. But look at you now. You faced it. You're braver than you think." Alana's tone was gentle again, the soldier gone, only the mother remaining. The scene slowly returned to quiet. The crowd dispersed, the police apologized, and the sun began to lower in the sky. But one of the bystanders, the man who recorded the whole thing, stayed behind. He looked at Alana and said softly, "Ma'am, I filmed it. I think people need to see what happened. Maybe it can help." Alana nodded slowly. "If it helps someone learn, then yes. Let them see. She didn't want revenge. She wanted awareness." That evening, the video went online. A little girl in a yellow dress crying, a barking police dog, and a mother walking calmly through chaos. The title read, "This is what fear looks like and what courage feels like." By morning, millions had seen it, and the world was already asking questions. But for Alana and Lila, all that mattered was that they were home, safe, together, and ready to face what came next. Because sometimes, the hardest battles are not fought overseas. They happen right in our own streets, between fear and understanding, between judgment and compassion, and that was only the beginning. The next morning, the small neighborhood that once felt peaceful now carried an uneasy silence. Everyone knew what had happened. The video of the little girl in the yellow dress had spread across phones and news feeds overnight. Some people cried watching it. Others argued. But to Lila Reeves, it was just another day of trying to understand why something so frightening had happened to her. She sat at the breakfast table, holding a cup of hot cocoa. Her mother, Major Alana Reeves, moved quietly around the kitchen, pretending everything was normal, though her mind was racing. Alana had spent years in war zones, training soldiers to stay calm under fire, but nothing had shaken her like watching her own daughter cry in the street. Lila's hands still trembled when she heard a dog bark outside. Her spoon rattled against the mug. Alana noticed and gently placed a hand over her daughter's. "Hey." "It's okay," she said softly. "You're home. You're safe." Lila nodded, but her eyes stayed on the window. "Mom, why did they do that?" "I told them I didn't do anything." Alana took a deep breath before answering. Sometimes people react before they think. Sometimes fear makes people forget to look closer. But I was just walking home, Lila whispered. I know, baby, Alana said. And you did nothing wrong. Outside, a reporter's van was parked near the end of the street. The news had found their address. Neighbors who once waved politely now avoided eye contact, unsure what to say. Everyone had an opinion, but no one truly understood what Lila felt. The confusion of being treated like a suspect when she had only been a child walking home. Inside, Alana's phone kept buzzing with messages. Her old teammates from the military reached out. Saw the video. You handled that like a pro. We're proud of you, Major. But one message stood out. It was from Captain Mason, her former commanding officer. Alana, I know you're angry, but don't let anger be your weapon. Let truth be, she read it twice. Then she looked at her daughter, who sat quietly, staring at her scraped knee. That night, Lila couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the flashing lights, the barking dog, the shouting. She heard her mother's voice cutting through it all, calm, powerful, unshakable. At around midnight, she walked into her mother's room and whispered, Can I sleep here tonight? Alana lifted the blanket and nodded. Always. Lila climbed into bed and rested her head against her mother's arm. Mom, are they going to be mad at us now? The police! Alana looked down at her daughter's innocent eyes. No, sweetheart. Sometimes people do wrong without meaning to, and sometimes the best thing we can do is help them see. Lila thought about that for a long time before whispering, You're brave. Alana smiled faintly. No, baby. You were brave. You faced something unfair and you're still standing. That's real courage. The next morning, a knock on the door interrupted their breakfast. Alana opened it to find two officers standing outside. The same ones from that afternoon. They didn't come with badges flashing or hands on belts. This time, their posture was different. Humbled, uncertain. Major Reeves, said Officer Daniels, his voice quiet. We wanted to apologize. Alana studied their faces. There was no arrogance this time, only regret. Daniels continued, We got the wrong information. The neighbor thought your daughter matched the description of someone else. We reacted too fast. We should have seen she was just a kid. Lila peeked from behind her mother. She held her mug tightly. Officer Cole added, I didn't mean for the dog to scare her like that. He's trained for situations that, well, this wasn't one of them. For a moment, Alana said nothing. The silence stretched until Daniels lowered his eyes. Then Alana finally spoke, calmly like she always did when she wanted her words to matter. I appreciate you coming, she said. But I hope you understand this wasn't just a mistake. It was fear making a decision. And next time, fear could hurt someone who doesn't have a mother nearby. Daniels nodded slowly. You're right, ma'am. I can't undo it, but I want to make it right. Lila stepped forward quietly. It's okay, she said, her voice small but sincere. Just please don't do that to anyone else. That single sentence made both officers fall silent. Sometimes it takes a child's voice to say what grown men can't. They left soon after, and Alana closed the door, feeling both proud and heavy. She knew forgiveness wasn't a weakness and it was strength. But she also knew that change doesn't come from one apology. It comes from awareness. Later that day, Alana sat with her daughter at the park. Other parents watched them cautiously, whispering, curious about the incident. But Alana didn't care. She pointed toward the open field where a few kids were playing soccer. Go play if you want to, she said. Lila hesitated. What if someone calls the police again? Alana's chest tightened at those words. She knelt beside her daughter and said, Listen to me. You belong wherever there's kindness. Don't let one moment steal your courage. Those words seemed to sink into Lila's heart. She walked toward the field, slowly at first, then faster. Within minutes she was running, laughing, playing again. And for the first time in days, Alana smiled. A real, warm smile. But as she watched her daughter, Alana's mind was already turning toward something else. The message from her captain echoed in her thoughts. Let truth be your weapon. She decided to do something more than just forgive. She would educate. That night, Alana drafted an email to the local police department. She offered to volunteer as a training consultant, helping officers learn about dealing with fear, bias, and community relationships. Her experience in the military had taught her that awareness could save lives. When she hit send, she didn't know what would happen next. But she believed that every small act of understanding could ripple into something greater. Meanwhile, the video continued to spread online. Comments poured in, some supportive, some angry. But one thing was clear, people were talking. And talking meant change had started. A few days later, the local news invited Alana to speak. She didn't want attention, but she knew her voice could help others. On live television, sitting beside her daughter, she spoke slowly and clearly. "This isn't about blame," she said. "It's about awareness. My daughter is not angry at the officers, she's scared. And fear should never exist between those who protect and those they protect." The host nodded. "Do you think things can really change?" Alana smiled faintly. "Yes, but not with more anger, with more understanding." When the interview aired, something unexpected happened. The police chief himself reached out, thanking her for her calmness and courage. He invited her to help create a new community training program focused on empathy and nonviolent response. It was a start. Not enough, but something real. At home, Lila sat watching her mother on TV, her eyes shining. "Mom," she said softly, "you sound like a hero." Alana turned off the television and smiled. "Heroes don't fight people, baby. They fight ignorance." Lila didn't fully understand the word ignorance, but she understood her mother's tone. It meant hope. That night before bed, Lila drew a picture. A little girl in a yellow dress holding her mother's hand while a police officer stood nearby, smiling. She titled it "Everyone Learns." When she showed it to her mom, Alana felt tears well up in her eyes. It was such a simple drawing, yet it said everything. "Can I bring this when you go talk to the police?" Lila asked. Alana nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. They need to see that picture more than anything I could say." The next week, Alana and Lila went to the community center where officers gathered for a new training session. Lila stood beside her mother as Alana spoke to the group. Her words weren't about anger or punishment. They were about connection. "You cannot protect what you don't understand," she said. "And you cannot understand what you're afraid to see." The room was silent. Some officers nodded. Others looked thoughtful. But one thing was certain. Her message had landed. Afterward, one of the officers, the same man who had once held the leash of the K9, approached Lila. He knelt and said, "I'm sorry, young lady. I should have seen you for who you were, not who I was told you might be." Lila looked at him and smiled shyly. "It's okay. We all can learn." That single sentence made even the hardest faces soften. By the time they left that day, something had changed, not just in the room, but in the people inside it. As they walked to their car, Alana looked down at her daughter and said, "You see, baby, even pain can be turned into purpose." Lila smiled, holding her mother's hand tightly. "Then let's keep helping them." And as the sun set behind them, their shadows stretched long, a soldier and her child, walking forward not with anger, but with courage. It wasn't just about one mistake anymore. It was about building a bridge, one heart at a time. Days passed, but the story did not fade. The video of that moment, a frightened girl and her calm, commanding mother, had traveled beyond the small town. It had become a symbol. Some called it a story about justice. Others called it a story about fear. But for Major Alana Reeves, it was still something simpler. A story about a child who never should have been afraid in the first place. One quiet morning, Alana sat on her porch with a cup of coffee, watching Lila play with chalk on the sidewalk. The girl drew big circles and hearts, and in the middle of them she wrote one word in pink chalk: brave. When Lila finished, she looked up. "Mom, is it true people all over are watching us on their phones?" Alana smiled softly. "Yes, sweetheart. But they're not just watching us. They're learning from us." Lila tilted her head. "Learning what?" "That even when something scary happens, we can face it with courage," her mother said. "And that change doesn't come from shouting, it comes from standing firm." Lila nodded slowly, not fully understanding, but she liked how calm her mother sounded. To her, her mom was a superhero, even if she never wore a cape. That afternoon, Alana received an unexpected call. It was from the police chief, who had seen the viral video and heard about her offer to train the department. His voice was serious yet respectful. "Major Reeves," he said, "I want to meet with you in person. You have every right to be angry, but I'd like to see if we can turn this into something positive for everyone. Alana paused before answering. I'll meet you, but not for an apology, for a solution. Fair enough, he replied. The next day, Alana put on her old military jacket, the one with her name stitched above the pocket, and drove downtown to the police department. The building was gray and cold with tall windows and a flag swaying in the wind. As she stepped inside, all eyes turned toward her. Some recognized her from the video. Others just felt the quiet authority she carried. She was greeted by Chief Randall, a man in his 50s with kind but tired eyes. Major Reeves, he said, offering his hand. Thank you for coming. Alana shook his hand firmly. Thank you for calling. I wasn't sure if you would, he smiled faintly. Neither was I. But watching that video, I realized something. We can't keep pretending everything's fine when people are scared of us, or when we make people feel scared without cause. They sat in a small meeting room. A few senior officers joined, including Daniels and Cole. The room was quiet, filled with tension and reflection. Alana began calmly. This isn't about my daughter anymore. It's about every person who's ever been seen as a threat just because someone misunderstood them. Chief Randall nodded. I agree. But change like this isn't easy. Departments run on rules and habits. Alana leaned forward. Then let's change the habits. I've led soldiers through worse. I've seen men unlearn fear and replace it with discipline and empathy. If they can do it under fire, your officers can do it on their own streets. There was silence for a moment. Then the chief said, What do you suggest? Alana outlined a program, a simple but powerful idea. She would volunteer her time to teach officers emotional control, crisis communication, and perspective training. It would not be about punishment. It would be about connection, helping officers remember that behind every call was a human being. The chief listened carefully. Finally, he nodded. We'll do it. You'll have my support? Daniel, sitting across from her, spoke softly. Major, I still think about that day. I can't sleep right. I saw the fear in her eyes. I don't ever want to see that again. Alana looked at him and said, Then start by seeing the person before the uniform. That's all I ask. The room fell quiet again. And just like that, something shifted. A plan began, not out of guilt, but out of responsibility. When Alana came home that evening, Lila was on the couch, coloring again. Did they say sorry, Mom? She asked. Alana smiled gently. They said something better. They said they want to learn. Lila's face brightened. Can I help too? Her mother chuckled. You already have, sweetheart. You helped more than you know. A week later, the first training session took place at the community center. Officers filled the room, some curious, some skeptical. Alana stood at the front, dressed not in military gear but in a plain shirt and jeans. Her presence, however, was enough to command attention. She began not with a lecture but with a story. When I was overseas, she said, we were trained to see threats everywhere, every sound, every shadow. But when we came home, we had to learn something new, how to stop seeing danger where there is none. Fear keeps you alive in war, but it destroys trust in peace. She looked around the room. You don't protect people by making them afraid. You protect them by understanding them. An officer in the back raised his hand. What if fear just happens? What if it's instinct? Alana nodded. Then train your instincts. A soldier doesn't stop being afraid. He learns how to think through it. You can too. Her voice was calm, never angry. She wasn't there to shame anyone. She was there to guide. Halfway through the session, she invited Lila to join her in front of the group. The little girl stood shyly beside her mother, holding her drawing, the one titled, Everyone Learns. This is my daughter, Alana said. She was scared that day, but she forgave you. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to believe in better. If she can do that at 10 years old, so can all of us. Lila looked at the officers and said in a small but steady voice, I want everyone to be friends again. There was silence in the room, and then one by one the officers started to clap. By the end of the day, Alana could feel something changing, a shift in the air, a sense of unity forming where division once stood. That night, when they returned home, Lila asked, Mom, did you see how they listened? Even the big one in the back smiled. Alana laughed softly. Yes, I saw. That's what happens when people listen to their hearts, not their fears. Lila grinned. Do you think they'll never be scared again? Her mother smiled. Maybe not, but now they'll know how to handle fear better. Over the next few weeks, Alana's sessions became regular. More officers attended. Some even brought family members. She taught them breathing exercises she'd used in combat to calm nerves. She showed them how to pause before reacting. And slowly, the department's reputation began to change. The local news ran a follow-up story titled, From Fear to Understanding, How One Mother Helped a Town Heal. When Alana saw it, she smiled faintly but didn't celebrate. This isn't about fame, she told Lila. It's about planting seeds. And seeds were indeed growing. Community members who once stayed silent began volunteering for neighborhood programs. Officers began visiting schools, reading to children, and even playing basketball at the local park. The bridge that had once been broken was slowly being rebuilt, one gesture at a time. One afternoon, Alana received a letter in the mail with no return address. Inside was a short note that read, Major Reeves, I was the neighbor who called that day. I am so sorry. I saw something that wasn't there. I've been crying ever since. I hope you and Lila can forgive me. I've started volunteering at the community center now, trying to do better. Mrs. Green. Alana folded the letter carefully. She didn't feel anger and only relief. She turned to her daughter and said, See, even mistakes can lead to something good if people learn from them. Lila smiled. Then we helped her too. That weekend, Alana took Lila to visit her old military base. The soldiers greeted her warmly, calling her Major with respect. She introduced Lila to some of them, showing her the training fields, the helicopters, the obstacle courses. This is where I learned to be strong, Alana told her. But strength isn't just about muscles or medals. It's about staying kind when the world gives you every reason not to be. Lila looked up at her mom, proud and wide-eyed. You're strong and kind, Mom. I want to be like that too. Alana hugged her tightly. Then you already are. That night before bed, Lila asked, Mom, do you think the police still remember me? Alana smiled gently. I think they'll remember you forever. You changed them, Lila thought for a moment. Then maybe we can change even more people. Her mother brushed a curl from her face. That's the plan, sweetheart. As the little girl drifted off to sleep, Alana stood by the window looking out at the quiet street where it all began. The same road that had once been filled with fear now held peace again. She knew the world wasn't perfect. Not yet. But for the first time in a long time, she believed it could be. Weeks passed, but the conversation sparked by that single video had not faded. What began as one frightening misunderstanding had grown into a movement for understanding and trust. Newspapers called Alana a hero mom. Online posts called Lila the girl who forgave. But inside their small home, life was quieter. Alana still woke early to make breakfast. Lila still ran to catch the school bus. And every night they still sat together on the couch talking about their day. Yet deep down, both knew that something was still unfinished. There was still one thing Alana had not faced. The police department's public hearing, scheduled to review the incident and answer questions from the community. The city expected her to attend, and she intended to. Lila, curious as always, asked her mother one evening, Are you going to tell them they were wrong? Alana looked at her and smiled faintly. I'm going to tell them the truth. And the truth doesn't need to shout, baby. It just needs to stand tall. The day of the hearing arrived. The city hall was crowded. Police officers, journalists, community members, and local leaders filled every seat. The atmosphere was heavy with tension. Some people expected anger. Others hoped for peace. When Alana entered the room, all eyes turned toward her. She was calm, dressed simply in a navy suit. Her presence carried quiet authority. Lila held her hand as they walked to the front row. Cameras clicked, microphones buzzed, and whispers filled the air. The police chief sat at the panel beside several officers, including Daniels and Cole. Their expressions were serious but respectful. When the mayor opened the floor, he spoke carefully. We're here to discuss what happened 3 weeks ago. The incident involving young Lila Reeves and the officers who responded. We also welcome Major Reeves, who has become an important voice for our community. Applause followed. Alana nodded politely. The chief began. We have already acknowledged that mistakes were made, but we must also look forward. I believe Major Reeves's involvement has taught us a great deal. He paused, then looked at Alana. Major, would you like to speak? Alana stood, her voice calm but firm. Thank you, Chief. I'm not here to accuse anyone. I'm here to remind everyone of something simple. A child should never have to fear those sworn to protect her. The room went silent. Even the clicking of cameras stopped. She continued. That day wasn't just about my daughter. It was about what happens when fear decides before facts do. Fear doesn't wear a color. Fear doesn't wear a uniform, but it can destroy trust if we let it lead. Her words carried weight. Not anger, but truth. She turned toward the audience. I've seen fear before. I've faced it on battlefields where it had every reason to exist. But here in our streets, fear should never be our first response. The badge should mean courage and calm, not panic. A few officers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others nodded slowly, reflecting. Lila sat in the front row watching her mother speak. To her, it was like watching a light cut through the dark. Alana looked at the panel again. I want to thank the officers who apologized. It takes humility to face your mistakes. But apology is not the end, and it's the start of something new. We must learn together to see people before assumptions, to pause before judgment. One officer in the audience raised his hand timidly. Major, what would you want us to do differently if we were in that same situation again? Alana smiled gently. I'd want you to see my daughter as someone's child. Not as a suspect, not as a threat. Just as a child who needed to get home safe. Her answer was simple, but it struck everyone deeply. After she finished, the mayor stood. Thank you, Major Reeves. Your words remind us what this meeting should truly be about. Rebuilding trust. The audience applauded again. Not out of pity, but out of genuine respect. Outside the hall, cameras surrounded Alana and Lila. Reporters shouted questions. Major Reeves, what do you hope comes from all this? Alana stopped and answered calmly. Change doesn't come overnight. But it starts with listening, really listening. I just hope we've begun that today. She took her daughter's hand and walked away, refusing to turn the moment into a spectacle. She wasn't seeking fame. She was seeking peace. That evening, back home, Alana sat on the porch as the sky turned orange. The neighborhood that once whispered now waved at her warmly. People had started seeing her differently. Not as the woman from the viral video, but as the mother who turned fear into purpose. Lila brought her a cup of tea. Mom, you were brave again today, Alana smiled. I just told the truth, baby. But the truth was brave, Lila said softly. Alana looked at her daughter, realizing how much strength the little girl had gained from all this. Maybe you're right, she said. Maybe truth is the bravest thing we can ever tell. Later that week, Alana received an official letter from the city. It was an invitation, not for another hearing, but for something new. A joint community police task force to promote empathy training across schools and local departments. They wanted her to lead it. She looked at the letter for a long time, feeling both proud and humbled. This was more than just a second chance for the officers. It was a new beginning for everyone. She accepted. The first meeting of the task force was held at a community gymnasium. Police officers, teachers, students, and parents gathered together in one space. There were no uniforms separating them, only name tags. The atmosphere was different this time. Hopeful, almost healing. Alana began with a simple exercise. Everyone close your eyes. Think of someone you love, your child, your parent, your friend. Now imagine seeing them scared. What would you do to protect them? The room fell completely silent. After a pause, she said, That's the feeling we must remember because every person we meet is someone's loved one. When she finished, people clapped quietly, not out of habit but out of understanding. Officer Cole approached her afterward. Major, I wanted to tell you, that day changed me. I used to see my job as just enforcing rules. Now I see it's about protecting hearts too. Alana nodded. That's how you'll make the difference. Not through power, through empathy. He smiled and shook her hand. As the months passed, the city began to change. Officers greeted residents with genuine smiles. Kids who once feared patrol cars now waved at them. Even Mrs. Green, the elderly neighbor who made the original call, attended Alana's workshops. Sitting quietly in the back row, listening and learning, one afternoon, she approached Alana after a session, tears in her eyes. I can't forgive myself for what I caused, she whispered. Alana touched her hand gently. You already have my being here. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do after. Mrs. Green nodded slowly, tears falling down her cheeks. Your daughter is lucky to have you. Alana smiled softly. No, I'm lucky to have her. At school, Lila became something of a local inspiration. Teachers invited her to talk about kindness and courage. Though shy at first, she would always say the same thing. I was scared that day. But my mom taught me to be brave, not by fighting, but by forgiving. Students listened quietly, some moved to tears. Her story wasn't just about fear anymore, it was about hope. When she came home that day, she ran to her mother. Mom, guess what? I told my class what you told me, to see people with kind eyes. And everyone clapped. Alana laughed and hugged her tight. That's because you're spreading light, baby. Keep doing that. Lila smiled proudly. You're spreading light too. They sat together under the same sunset that had once witnessed their pain. Only now it shone on something beautiful. Healing. Months later, Alana received another letter, this time from the governor's office. It announced a new statewide initiative inspired by her training program. She had been invited to speak at a leadership summit in the capital. As she prepared her speech, Lila helped her pack. Mom, are you nervous? Alana smiled. Maybe a little. But nervous just means it's important. Are you going to tell them about me? Lila asked. Of course, Alana said. You're the reason all this began. At the summit, standing before hundreds of people, Alana shared their story, not as a tragedy, but as a lesson. Our strength as a society, she said, doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from admitting our mistakes, growing from them, and never letting fear lead us again. The audience rose to their feet, giving her a standing ovation. But in her heart, the only applause that mattered was her daughter's. When she returned home, Lila ran into her arms. You did it, Mom. You made everyone listen. Alana smiled and whispered, No, sweetheart. We did it. The days after the public hearing felt strangely calm in Alana's small town. But beyond those quiet streets, the story had taken on a life of its own. What began as a single moment between a frightened little girl and two police officers had grown into a movement that touched millions of hearts across the country. The video continued to spread, not just through news stations, but through schools, churches, community centers, and even police academies. Teachers showed it in classrooms to discuss courage and empathy. Pastors spoke about it in sermons. Parents sat down with their children to talk about understanding and kindness. And in the middle of all that attention, Lila Reeves, the girl in the yellow dress, became a name everyone knew. Yet at home, she was still just a 10-year-old who liked cartoons, chocolate milk, and sitting on her mother's lap during thunderstorms. One morning, Alana found a stack of letters on her front porch. The envelopes came from across the country, Florida, New York, California, even small towns she had never heard of. Each letter carried a story, a thank you, or a confession. One was from a police officer who wrote, Your calmness changed the way I wear my badge. Another came from a teacher who said, I showed your video to my students. They cried. They understood. But the one that moved Alana most came from a young woman in Texas. It read, When I saw your daughter cry, I saw myself. Years ago, I was stopped for no reason. I was angry for so long, but watching you handle everything with grace made me realize that peace is stronger than rage. Thank you for showing me another way. Alana sat at her kitchen table, holding that letter close. Lila peeked over her shoulder. Are people still writing about us? Her mother smiled softly. Yes, but I think they're really writing about themselves, and the kind of world they want to live in. Lila smiled, proud. Then maybe we helped them. You did, Alana said, brushing her daughter's hair. You helped them see what kindness looks like even when life isn't fair. As the weeks turned into months, the world continued to watch Alana and Lila's story unfold. The city's community police task force began showing results. Reports of unnecessary stops dropped. Citizens started attending open forums where officers and residents shared stories face to face. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One afternoon, Alana received a call from a television producer in New York. They wanted to invite her and Lila to a national morning show. Your story gives people hope, the producer said. Would you come share it? Alana hesitated. She never wanted fame, but she also knew that sharing their experience could help others. After talking with Lila, she agreed. A week later, they flew to New York, Lila's first time on a plane. She pressed her face to the window as the world shrank below. Mom, the clouds look like cotton candy. Alana laughed. Yes, they do. But don't try to eat them. The studio lights were bright. The audience clapped as they walked on stage. The host greeted them warmly. Please welcome Major Alana Reeves and her incredible daughter, Lila. The applause filled the room. Lila smiled shyly, waving to the crowd. The host leaned forward. Major Reeves, millions have seen your video. What do you hope people take away from it? Alana paused before answering. That strength doesn't mean shouting. Sometimes it means staying calm when your heart is breaking. I hope people learn that we all share the same fears, and that understanding is the first step to healing. The host nodded. And Lila, how are you doing now? Lila's eyes brightened. I'm okay. I play with my friends again. And I tell them not to be scared of police, because some of them came to my school and said sorry. The audience applauded again. It wasn't pity. It was admiration for a child who had faced fear and chosen forgiveness. After the show, people online began calling Lila the brave little girl who changed hearts. Alana never encouraged the fame, but she couldn't deny how powerful it was to see kindness spreading because of her daughter's courage. A month later, Alana was invited to speak at a national leadership conference in Washington. DC leaders, activists, and officers from across the country attended. She stood on stage before a crowd of hundreds. I'm not here as a soldier or a hero, she began. I'm here as a mother. That day, when I saw my daughter afraid, I didn't see enemies. I saw people who needed help understanding the pain they were causing. We can't build peace with anger. We build it with awareness and love. Her speech was met with thunderous applause. Dozens of police chiefs approached her afterward, asking to bring her training to their cities. Back home, Lila watched the speech on TV, clapping proudly from the couch. That's my mom, she shouted, but not everyone celebrated. On social media, there were critics too. People who said she was too forgiving, too calm, that she should have fought harder. When Alana read those comments, she didn't feel anger. She felt sadness because those people didn't understand what true strength meant. One evening, as she sat reading online messages, Lila asked, Mom, are they being mean again? Alana smiled faintly. Some people don't know how to listen yet, but one day they will. Then we just keep being nice? Lila asked. Yes, baby, because kindness doesn't lose. It lasts. That simple answer became Alana's guide for everything that came next. One evening, Alana and Lila were invited to attend a special ceremony at City Hall. When they arrived, they saw the same officers from that day, Daniels, Cole, and others, standing at attention. But this time there were no sirens, no shouting, no fear, just peace. The mayor stood at the podium. Tonight we honor Major Alana Reeves and her daughter, Lila, for reminding us what courage, forgiveness, and leadership look like. He presented Alana with a Community Medal of Honor and handed Lila a small framed certificate that read, "For bravery beyond her years." Lila held it tightly, her eyes wide.
Mom, I have my own medal.
Alana laughed softly, tears in her eyes. You earned it, sweetheart. After the ceremony, Officer Daniels approached them. His eyes were red. Major Lila, I'll never forget that day. It changed my whole life. I transferred to the Youth Outreach Unit. I work with kids now, kids who remind me of Lila. Alana smiled and shook his hand. That's what healing looks like. Thank you for growing. Lila smiled too. You're nicer now. Daniels laughed. I learned from the best. As months passed, more cities adopted Alana's training program. News outlets ran stories about police departments showing her video as part of empathy lessons. Lila's picture, smiling in her yellow dress, became a quiet symbol of hope printed in classrooms across the country. One day, a large package arrived at their home. Inside were drawings made by children from schools everywhere. Pictures of police shaking hands with kids, hearts drawn between them, and words written in crayons. Thank you for making the world kind again. Lila looked at them with wide eyes. Mom, they remembered us. Alana smiled warmly. They remembered what you taught them, to forgive, to be brave, and to care. But amid all the public attention, Alana always tried to keep life normal. She still picked Lila up from school, still cooked pancakes on Sundays, still went for morning runs through the park. Fame never changed her because her mission wasn't about fame and it was about people. And one day, when everything felt calm again, she received a visit from someone unexpected. Mrs. Green, the neighbor whose phone call had started it all. The older woman stood on the porch, nervous, holding a basket of muffins. "I wasn't sure if you'd want to see me," she said quietly. Alana smiled gently. "Come in, Mrs. Green." Mrs. Green sat on the couch, twisting her hands nervously. "I've been meaning to come for months. I wanted to say sorry face to face. I didn't mean to cause all this. I was scared. I saw something that wasn't there." Alana looked at her kindly. "You weren't the only one who saw something that wasn't there. We all do it sometimes. But what matters is that you're here now." Tears filled the old woman's eyes. "You're too kind to me." Alana shook her head. "Kindness isn't something we save. It's something we give, especially when it's hardest." Mrs. Green smiled through tears. "Your daughter is lucky." Alana looked over at Lila, who was drawing quietly by the window. "No, Mrs. Green," she said softly. "I'm the lucky one." That evening, as the sun dipped low, Alana and Lila sat outside, watching the golden light fade over their peaceful street. "Mom," Lila said suddenly, "do you think everyone is good deep down?" Alana thought for a moment. "I think most people want to be. Sometimes fear hides the good in them, but when love shows up, fear has to leave." Lila nodded thoughtfully. "Then I hope we can help more people let love in." Her mother smiled. "That's the best hope anyone can have." The night settled in softly, carrying with it the sound of laughter from distant houses. The world had changed, not because of anger, not because of protest, but because one mother and one little girl chose to stand firm in peace. Months had passed since the day everything changed. The small suburban street where fear once echoed had become a place of calm again. Birds sang in the trees. Children played outside after school. The sound of laughter replaced the memory of sirens. But for Major Alana Reeves and her daughter Lila, the most beautiful change was the one they could not see, the change happening inside people's hearts. The community was no longer divided between us and them. Officers greeted residents by name. Parents waved at patrol cars instead of pulling their children closer. And at the center of it all stood the same woman who had once walked through chaos with nothing but her voice and her calm. Alana Reeves. One bright Saturday morning, Alana stood at the community center, helping set up chairs for another workshop. The banner across the wall read in bold letters, "Bridge Project, Together We Learn." It was her idea, a monthly event where police officers, families, and children would come together to share stories, ask questions, and listen to one another. No badges, no barriers, just people. As the room filled, Alana looked around and smiled. Officer Daniels was helping a group of kids arrange their art posters. Officer Cole carried a tray of snacks to a long table where parents chatted warmly. Mrs. Green, the elderly neighbor who had once made the call, stood by the door handing out welcome cards that said, "Thank you for being here." The sight almost made Alana's eyes well up. Change, she realized, did not happen from speeches or viral videos alone. It grew slowly, through conversations, shared effort, and hearts willing to listen. Leela ran up to her mother, holding a colorful poster. "Mom, look, I made a new one." Alana crouched down to see. The poster showed a police officer and a little girl holding hands under a bright sun. Above them, Lila had written in big, bold letters, "We are one team." Alana smiled and kissed her forehead. "That's perfect, baby. That's exactly what this is about." When the session began, Alana stood in front of the crowd. Her voice was gentle but steady. "Today isn't about talking at each other," she said. "It's about listening to each other. Fear grows when we stop listening." She invited people to speak freely. A young officer stood first. "Before all this happened," he said, "I thought being strong meant never showing doubt. But now I know strength means asking questions when you don't understand." Next, a mother in the audience raised her hand. "I used to tell my son to stay away from police," she admitted. "Now I tell him to talk to them. Because I've met people like Officer Daniels, and I know not everyone is the same." The room nodded in quiet agreement. Small statements like these built bridges no policy could ever write. When it was Lila's turn, she stepped forward shyly but with a spark of confidence that hadn't been there months ago. "I was really scared that day," she said. "But then Mom told me to forgive, and now I'm not scared anymore. I even want to be a helper when I grow up. Maybe a teacher, or maybe a police officer." The audience smiled and applauded softly. Officer Cole leaned over to whisper, "If you ever join the academy, I'll be honored to train with you." Lila giggled. "Only if you bring snacks." The laughter broke the tension, and for a moment everyone simply felt human again.